Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us for our QlikView online user conference. My name is Laurel Dobbin. I'll be your moderator today. You will see your webinar pane in front of you. Please note that the orange arrow will allow you to minimize or maximize the pane. If it is minimized, simply click on the orange arrow to bring it back. All webinar participants will receive an email in the next 48 hours with a link for a copy of the webinar slides and a video of the recorded webinar. To modify your audio settings, if you're using your telephone to listen in on our webinar today, please make sure you select Use Telephone. If you are listening through your computer speakers, please select Use Mic and Speakers. If you have the incorrect settings selected, it will produce an echo sound. And now let's meet today's presenters. John Horner is a partner at Armanino. He has 15 years of experience in data warehouse and business intelligence implementations for a variety of industries, including retail and distribution, consumer product goods, high-tech, manufacturing, professional services, and utilities. He has expert knowledge of the business intelligence marketplace, having implemented solutions incorporating QlikView, SAP Business Objects, and Microsoft SQL Server BI. John leads Armanino's business intelligence practice. Rob Wonderlic is a consultant with Armanino. He has over 30 years of experience in the IT industry, holding positions as a software developer, manager, consultant, and IT architect. Since 2006, Rob has been working with the QlikView BI product, developing applications, implementation strategies, and providing training and support to developers. He is the author of the popular QlikView cookbook used by QlikView developers worldwide. And finally, Jeffrey Weong is a director at Armanino. He has broad experience in all aspects of enterprise application development, technical support, system integrations, and business intelligence in QlikView. He manages a high-performing application development team for Armanino's business intelligence practice. Today's presentation is going to go over 30 tips and tricks in 30 minutes. We're going to have a QlikView reporting tools review, a QVD multi-tier data architecture, and finally finish up with an ad hoc query and search. And now we'll go to Jeffrey for our 30 tips and tricks in 30 minutes.
Thank you, Rolla. Hopefully you guys will be able to see my screen by now. Steve, Roller, can you please confirm?
Yes, we can see your screen.
Okay, great. So, good morning, good afternoon, everybody. I'm going to try to attempt to do 30 tips in under 30 minutes. We definitely have quite a bit of information to cover. What we're going to do is start with the higher level view, specifically for end users, and then we're going to move into a more specific technical around building for, and last but not least, we're going to start building it up a bit more in-depth again, and perspective, going through some tips and tricks developers. So since we have quite a bit of material to cover, I'm just going to go right into the first tip. So what you typically notice when you're accessing QlikView through an access point, if you're accessing it through Ajax, one thing that people sometimes ask me, it's good that it remembers where I was last, what selections I made, and everything that was done on the last session. Sometimes people like that. Sometimes people don't like that. So if you don't like that, and if you like to have it removed before you log into the application, there is a view details. Then you can just click remove last document state. That will remove your previous session, if you will. It wouldn't remember your previous session. So when you go right into the dashboard, it will actually show you the default of the application itself. So if we dive into a particular application, in this case, the movie database, the other thing that a lot of people tend to forget, the way QlikView works is pretty much context sensitive when it comes to right-clicking. So for example, we can right-click on the chart and see certain information such as copying, printing, sell, and export into a CSV in terms of data. You can also do a fast change where it's available, where it's going to be changing into a different visualization from a bar to a line graph to a straight table in this case. At the same time, you can do the same right-click on any of the other objects, such as list boxes. It will be context sensitive, so it will return you a different set of available options when you do so. So in this case, you might be able to do select possible, doing searches, clearing your selections, and the same similar thing with just printing and sending information to Excel, including exporting to CSV. So that's another tip that typically we come across pretty often. And the next one is the feature that people like quite a bit when it comes to QlikView, which is slicing and dicing by different dimensions using cycle groups. So in this case, you see a pie chart broken out by the length, and you can click again on the cycle group. That would be switching to decade, and if we click it again, it might switch to another year. This is very useful, very easy, but then if the cycle group contains too many items, sometimes they can get pretty hard to navigate. And one thing that you should be able to do as well, you can right-click on it, right-click on the actual cycle group. That allows you to be able to pick exactly the item and the dimension that you'd like to select. So that makes it for you to work and navigate if the cycle group's dimensions tends to be long. So that helps with the tips and tricks around cycle groups. The next one is around on how you'd be able to use QlikView when it comes to searches. So I'm going to go back out, and I'm going to go back into the demo application, and I'm going to share with you a couple different ways on how you can do first searches. The first search is searching text. That's typically very common, and everyone should be fairly familiar with that. In this case, I can click on the product name, for example. I can type shoes. It will be able to select different shoes and all the different text that contain the word shoes. So that's pretty self-explanatory. But what people don't realize, you can also search on numbers and dates. First thing you can do, we have a list box of order IDs that consists of dates. And what you can do is you can actually start typing the search string of greater than sign, for example, in this case, greater than sign equal to 11,000. What that will do, that will filter all the orders, order ID greater than 11,000. And if you hit enter, it will select all those order IDs that's greater than 11,000. The other thing you can do as well is with order dates as well. You can treat it as a date, so you can do the same similar thing, which is greater than 1/1/2000. And at the same time, we want to limit it to less than or equal to 3/1/2000. So that will give us all the January and February dates. So I have another tip when it comes to searching multiple values. Sometimes you would like to select multiple values, and everybody should be aware that you can select the multiple values using the control click by holding the control key. And then when you release it, it will select all those 3 different order ID that I just selected. However, sometimes it's also difficult when you have a longer list where the list is not easily, readily that you can click on it, and maybe the list is actually sitting somewhere in your Excel spreadsheet. What you can do is you can actually create those search strings with space separated. So if I copy this exact string, which is the order ID that I would like to search, which is 11,000, 11,010, and 11,030, I can quickly do so. And if I paste this over, oops, apologize for that. I'll just type it in for now. 11,000 space 11,010 space 11,030. Then you would be selecting those order IDs, and if we hit enter, it will select those 3 different entries. Again, that's another tip when it comes to searching multiple values. We can continue on the path of searching as well. The other information that you can search is associative search. So for example, if you have a context where you would like to know the orders where ballet shoes and basket shoes are included as part of the order, but what you'd like to know is actually the order total for that particular order, not just based on the basket shoes and the ballet shoes sales. So in this case, you can do so by typically selecting the ballet shoes and basket shoes. It will return back to you the order ID under white. Then you can always select possible, and then you can deselect or clear your product name selection. That will return you back the order IDs along with the sales for those orders. However, there is a quicker way to get to it, and that is using associative search. So you can click on the search, the magnifying glass, and you can hit the plus sign. What you can do now, you can actually search on shoes. In this case, I'm interested in ballet and basket shoes. You can select those 2. And when you release them and you can hit enter, that will in turn select all the orders that contain ballet shoes and basket shoes without actually selecting the actual dimension ballet shoes and basket shoes under product name. So in turn, it will just select 70 different orders out of the 836 orders that we have. So that's just another quick way of searching information. The other thing that sometimes everyone struggles with as well is selecting nulls. So for example, you might have a product list with sales amount in it. And if you start scrolling down, eventually you might find a product name where it doesn't exist, where it's null, but it does have the sales amount. Maybe in this case it's a write-in products. But how do we select that? Because by clicking on this table alone, it's not going to help us select it. One way you can select it, you can use the function again. In this case, a function equal then sign is null product name, and you can use this formula, for example, on the product description. When you do so, it will automatically filter just the product description that match that criteria, which is where the product name is null. And enter on this one. It will return back to you on the table here the product name where it's blank and where it has the sales amount. So again, that's just another way of searching or selecting values where it's null. And we'll come back a bit later on how we can handle that differently as well. The next one is setting references. And setting references is a feature that's only available through IE plugin. So I would like to share with you that information within the IDE, within the development environment here. So setting reference, sometimes it's useful when you're trying to compare, for example, 2 different things very quickly. In case we would like to compare the trending of sales of men's footwear and ladies' footwear. How do we do that very quickly? So one thing that we could do is selecting the men's footwear on the category name. And then the next thing we're going to do is we're going to go to the sales trend, and we're going to right-click on it, and we're going to set reference. And you're going to see a light bar graphs will be displayed, and at this point we can actually select ladies footwear. So what that's going to do, the darker blue bars, that represent the ladies footwear trend, while the light bar graphs represent the men's footwear that we selected earlier. So you can make selections and compare two different sets of values very quickly. And we can clear the references by right-clicking again and clear reference item. One of my last tips when it comes to user interface as an end user is the concept of my dashboard. If this is allowed by your development team and how the application is built, as an end user on the website, you are actually able to create your own tabs with your own content within it. So I'm going to illustrate this by creating a new tab. This is on the web. I'm going to create add sheet. It's going to create my new sheet for me, specifically just for you. And you can click repository. This will list out anything that was built in this application that you can reuse. So one thing I'm going to do, I'm just going to drag quickly sales trend, and I'm going to create a link in this one. What that means is if changes are made on the other sales trend chart, let's say the axis, then this chart will also be getting updated automatically. And maybe in this case, I also like to add sales by product. And then maybe what I'm going to do, I'm also going to add category names so I can make my selections. So again, this is just to give you the idea that you can very quickly build your own concept with my dashboard where everything will just work and as easy as drag and drop. Okay, we're going to move to the next topic, the next set of topic. We're going to move to the development environment. I'm going to go ahead and close this. And I'm going to move to development environment. The first thing I'm going to share with you is there is a new set of menus that allows you to suppress some things. In this case, suppressing splash screen. When you open up QlikView for the first time, it will display a splash screen. I'm not sure if you're able to see it because of the delay of the web meeting, but there's a splash screen that will be displayed. And one way you can suppress that so that way it doesn't come up again is by going to the Help About. And when you see there's a queue on the bottom left corner, you can right-click on it and a new menu will pop up. And this will give you a number of different settings. And I have to give you a heads up that you got to really take special care before you make modification on any one of this. But the one I'm particularly used to do is suppress splash. And I can change the value from 0 to 1, and I make that set. And if I close this and if I open up QlikView again, the splash screen doesn't show up anymore. So the other thing that you can do, that's the next tip as you're doing your analysis, is you can quickly copy, you can drag and drop really quickly an Excel spreadsheet into a QlikView icon, and it will actually start importing it. So I have an order header Excel spreadsheet. I can drag that into my 11.2 IDE. And then what's going to do, it's going to automatically open that one Excel spreadsheet. It's going to create a brand new QlikView, and it's going to return back to me the wizard. And if I click Finish on this one, it will help me paste all the script on it, and actually I can run reload and start doing my processing that way. So again, this is very quick, easy way for you to be able to analyze Excel spreadsheets. The next thing, once you have your QlikView build up, I want to keep reminding everybody there are multiple ways to make things a bit easier when it comes to building QlikView dashboards. The first thing is copying. Copying an object, you can always C, Control-V, which is copy and paste. So you can do that very quickly, and you got those copy created. But if you want to do it in one step, you can actually use the Control key and then hold that and then drag your mouse. That will actually create a copy of it, and you can tell that by seeing the green plus sign, and when you release it, you got a copy of the object array. But the other thing that you sometimes do, you create a copy of an object, but you actually want to put it somewhere else. You can move any existing list boxes or any objects by just dragging that object into the tab where you want to place them. And you should see there's a green, there should be a white downward arrows that's showing where it's going to end up. So if you drag that, then you actually see the object presented exactly in the same location as you had it in the first tab. So you can do that very quickly. You can move things back and forth. And the other thing that you could do, you can actually make copies as well. So you can still use the same concept, which is Control, drag, and then you can drag it to the other sheet, and it will make a copy of it, and you can see that by the downward arrow as well as the green plus sign. If you release it, it will actually create another copy on the other tab. The other thing that you're going to be able to find within QlikView is the concept of linked objects. A lot of you are probably aware of the linked objects, so I won't spend too much time, but I will definitely cover the basics of it. Essentially, you can make a copy of list box, in this case, an object, then you can paste it over as a link. So you have the option of right-click, paste sheet object as link. When you paste it over, then any changes you make, so for example, you could change on the font for this particular list boxes. For example, if I pick an obvious one here, then this will in turn change the other. So that makes it convenient when it comes to making changes in one place and affecting others, especially for the same list boxes. And how can you tell if it's a linked object? Obviously, there's a linked object menu when you right-click on it. But when you click the properties as well, you're also going to see two linked objects shown up on the properties or the caption of the property box. The other thing you could do, sometimes you want to resize or you want to change the location of the object and you want to apply it everywhere else. There's the option where you can actually right-click on it, linked object, and adjust position of linked object. Because without you doing so, when we move this, the initial object wouldn't move. But if we enforce that by adjusting everything, it will actually move also the other object to the same exact locations. So that's just another way of managing objects and the similar ones. The other thing that I want to share with you is how you will be able to show information when it's hidden. So sometimes when we build QlikView, we use visibility conditionally. And that's common, and it's becoming native a part of QlikView. So in this case, the graph down at the bottom will only show up when I select any categories. If I deselect the categories, then that will disappear, but then in turn it will show me this, this node that I have to select a category name. One way you can actually show everything to make it easier is to Control-Shift and then hit the S. It will actually show me all the hidden objects within that sheet, as well as any hidden tabs that was hidden previously. That way you don't have to modify the conditional visibility, and all you need to do is just start making changes. And once you're done with making the changes, then we can hit the Control-Shift-S again to hide those objects. The other concept that I want to share with you is copy and pasting expressions. One thing that's really useful when you're copying and pasting an expression is you actually copy along some of the attributes of it. So that comes pretty handy as well. So for example, if I copy this sales and paste it over, and then I start modifying this to exactly what I want, in this case, cost of sales, then I can very quickly do that because not only I copied the expression, but I also copied some of the number formatting, which is also already been set up previously. So I can do that really quickly, and when I mouse over, as you can see, it's been added already based on what I configured on the sales side. The other thing that you could do, not only just copying expressions, but copy. So for example, if I prefer to see a color is actually this yellow color instead, I can copy the color by right-clicking on it, and I can also right-click where I want to paste it over. I can paste all the colors and the base colors. I simply just go with the paste all, and it will replace that color without you having to memorize and jot down the RGB colors. That should be another interesting tip. The other one that I want to share with you also is sometimes when I'm building my table charts or any visualization, sometimes I keep changing the different dimensions that I want to use, or sometimes I made a mistake of the dimension that I used earlier. So for example, I have a top chart, and right now it's broken out by the product descriptions. But I just realized after setting up all the properties for product description, such as having a scroll bar, x-axis scroll bar when over 24, I want to limit the number of characters to just 15 characters. If I just replace this with a new dimension, which is in this case product name, which is the right one I should have, if I double-click on the product name and remove the product description, some of those attributes that we've set previously doesn't stick anymore. So I'm going to undo this, and I'm going to share with you how you can make the changes so that way it sticks with the same attributes, especially the presentation attributes. So the best way to do it is by editing it. So that means you're not actually removing the actual dimensions, you're just replacing it, in this case, with the product name. So if I do this, hit OK. As you can see, it changes now with the product names, but all the attributes such as a scroll bar and the limitation on the characters will remain persistent. The other tip that I have here, sometimes I struggle with limited amount of space, especially when it comes to building tables-related visualizations. So in this case, I do have a pivot table, and as you can see, there are a number of different. And as you can see, if the space that we have set aside, the real estate is just going to be this big, what's going to happen is it's going to actually truncating some of our content, and it's not as pleasing to see. So one way you can solve that is using the Indent Mode. And in this case, you can see how every single dimension can actually go longer than their size of column. And this makes things a bit more readable from a lot of perspective. And how do you do that? It's really easy, really straightforward. All you do is just go to Presentation, or actually Style, and just check the Indent Mode. When you check the Indent Mode, and it's going to start behaving that way. And then you also have the option to use the first dimension label only. So in this case, we're using every single dimension as the label, but we can just use the first one, and if we click OK on this, you can see that the other label disappeared. But again, the presentation will help, so that way it's easier for the users to use and to see as well. The next one that I have here is sometimes, again, I struggle with the limited amount of space that I have when it comes to building a table-like format. In this case, I have a table, a straight table. This one has quite a bit of dimensions, and it has a couple different expressions. This typically not a problem where you only end up having a scroll bar just this size when it comes to Ajax. But when it comes to IDE or anything like that, you do have that limitation. And one way we typically do to avoid this scroll bar, because it's hard to see and navigate, is we created a workaround. And let me open up the one that we have done. So in this one, you see the scroll bar goes all the way to the end. So it's easier for the user to navigate and for people to see the information. And how do we do this? We actually create a new expression, and the expression is what makes up this small column right here. And by moving the expression ahead of the dimension, it will actually allow the scroll bar to be stretched all the way to the end. And the way we do that is if we go to this, we just create a very simple dummy expression. And in this case, the definition is just 1. We can even add a space in it. And the label, we just add a space in it, so that way it doesn't have a label. And the other thing that we do, in this case, we did just to make sure it's confirmed, we're just hiding it with the color white. So that way the users are not able to see that that's actually a dimension, an expression that we created. Okay. The next one that we're going to go over is the power of yellow. So essentially, we all familiar with the concept of the green, the gray, and the white. When we click on a category, in this case, baby wear, we can see that the selection is green, everything associated with it is white, and then anything that's not associated is grayed out. However, if we make further selections, what's going to happen is it's also going to do the same thing against the customer. So at this point, we select the babies wear and I know shoes. The good thing is we know what we selected, but what's lacking in this case, we're not sure now what the product names that's available under baby wear. So if we mistakenly click on something that's outside the boundary of babies wear, we click, in this case, the running shoes, what's going to happen is going to deselect our category that we selected earlier, which is babies wear. Instead, it's going to present you sportswear. So introducing the power of the yellow, or showing the alternatives, it gives us that feedback. So if you go to list box properties, and if you show the alternatives, and what's going to happen is you can see actually what's the other alternative for product names within the baby wear category name in this case. So that way we can select on any one of them very quickly without the fear of deselecting our category selections. So hopefully that would be useful. The next one we're going to share with you is the concept of and selection. So if we go back really quick on this, if we hit clear on this one really quick, when we're making selections on the product names on this, let's say we select on cap boots, what's going to happen is it will return back all customers related to cap and boots. That means customer who either bought caps or bought boots or both, or they bought both of those products. But sometimes what we're looking for is actually making a selection where we want to see all customers who bought cap and boots. So that could get tricky. But with a few changes on the data model, and I wouldn't go through those changes right now, but I will share with you the list of information. But essentially, we create a very simple table hanging off the fact information in this case that essentially contains the combinations of customers and products. We're able to create an AND list box. We can check the Indent Mode. So what that's going to do if we select cap and car boots, and notice there's an ampersand in front of it that shows and indicates that this is an AND operation. As you can see, the list of customers is a lot shorter, and if we see of the table down below, it's showing the number of products bought by each customer, in this case by cap and car boots. And then the other concept that we have, what if we want to see all customers who bought cap and car boots, but not bow tie? And what we could do is we can hold on the bow tie. We select the bow tie and hold on to it until it becomes red. Then you release it. And that will essentially tells us that these are all customers who bought cap, car boots, but not bow tie. Hopefully that is useful as well. I'm going to jump to the next section, which is going to involve more of the back-end scripting. So the first one that I typically like to use is the concept of generating sample data. Sometimes I need to work really quickly, and I want to build a sample data very, very quickly, so that way I can do my quick analysis. So one thing that I do, if you go to a main page like this, you can just hit Control Q, so you Q twice. What I will do, it will actually create you automatically a sample scripts that will contain anything from dates, I apologize, not dates, but numbers, ASCII codes, dimensions, transactions number, as well as multiple expressions. So that way you can start making your tests really quickly without generate your own sample data. That typically comes pretty handy. The other thing that I want to share with you is also the concept of includes. So a lot of times, I think we're all familiar with the concept of includes, which is including a script that's been created outside of QlikView in a text file or QVS file. So the format something like this. Can I just shorten it because we're on the same path? And this would be the syntax. It will start loading that QVS script, and it works. So great, but the problem with that concept, even if the test QVS script doesn't exist, so for example, if I move it somewhere else, so if I have this test QVS, if I copy and cut this to a new folder, and if we rerun this, it will still work because it makes it optional to include those. And in a lot of cases, we do not want to have that because we might include things such as config files that we do not want to miss, if you will. So what we do is we can create a prefix here. We can add a prefix of must underscore include. When we do so, if we can't find it, when we run, it will fail the whole reload. This will ensure that you are going to be including the QVS script that you intend to do. Okay. So going to the next concept, this is just probably more of a reminder. You can also quickly, there are a number of set variables up on the top, the environment set variables, but you can also insert more set variables by going up, insert menu, and then selecting the set statement. So within here, you can actually set, for example, number interpretations. So you can actually do more than what was listed there if you want to make changes. Or, for example, you can also change any of the special handling. So there are things like high prefix that we a lot of times use, and there are others as well. So it's very easy for you to just pick what's common out there and this the starting point. So if I hit paste on this, what it's going to do is actually going to give me that script. Okay, going to the next one is we talked a bit about working with nulls earlier when the users are selecting nulls. But this is also something that we can use from the backend to make it a bit more seamless for the users. So I have a load script here that loading data from the order header. And one of the product, which is the product name, contains nulls. And how do we do that? So we can treat null as a value. That's the first thing we can do. We can reload this, for example. And if we reload that information, we're going to be able to see a product name that listed as a null that we can select. Previously, null wouldn't show up here as the product name. But the other thing that we could do is set the value of that null so that way it becomes a bit more obvious. So in this case, I just type in the word missing, set null value equals missing. And then when I reload this, then I can see that the nulls have the missing value. So that could be helpful as well when you're handling nulls. The other thing that we could do as well, this is something that we adopted from hosting from Wonderlic, is the use of dual values. I find it really helpful, really handy, because a lot of the time what we typically have, in this case, we have a column here called process that would be a 1 or 0 flag. But presenting that might not be as visually appealing, but we still need to have a 0 and 1 because we would like to do operations on them, for example. So what we do is we create a temporary table, and we're going to load from an inline in this case, and we're going to load it to a dual. Dual means it allows the same field to be treated as a text as well as a number. So in this case, we're going to say yes equals to 1, no equals 0. And we're going to load this first, and we're going to load our data, and we're going to drop the temp table again later. So if we load this, what's going to happen is, if we go to the dual values tab here, let me double check if I did it correctly. What should have happened, apparently it got moved. So we can see that the process now, it's no and yes, which is very helpful. But the other thing that we could do is we can actually show it in the number format by going to the number and forcing the number, forcing the format to be a number. And now we can see 0 and 1. And we can use this operations, such as comparison with a number or with a text. And last but not least, I got a couple different items as well. I know we're slightly over here, and I'm trying to wrap it up. The first one is table debug, and again, this is another one that comes really handy. This is also adopted from Rob Wonderlic's blog that I find really, really useful. But in order for you to do this, you need to download both the QVC, which is a QlikView component started by Rob Wonderlic, also a product named QViewer that you can download for free with some limitation from easyqlik.com website. So with this combination, what you could do is you can stop the operation during the reload, and you can inspect the content of the table. So in this case, we use include the QVC script, and we use the load script as usual. And next, we're going to do inspect the data by calling QVC inspect table and then passing the table name. And then we do further operation. In this case, we're going to left join it with a detail, and we're going to inspect the data again. So that means we're going to inspect the data before and after the operation. So I'm going to comment this one out. I'm going to run this table debug so that way you can see what it looks like. You're going to see this where you're going to override the security because it's trying to open up that QV viewer. Then it'll actually open up the content of the order header at that point in time. So pretty handy, pretty interesting, and you can check the content, the cardinality. You can check a number of different things. And if you close this, we can proceed with our load script. And again, I'm going to override security because we're going to pop that open for the second time. And now when we analyze the data table again, in this case, we contain more information, which contains the actual product, quantity, sales amount, and other information. So this is already combining with the details. So again, this comes really handy when you need to troubleshoot and figure out information that's missing. The last but not least, a tip that would be helpful as well when it comes to troubleshooting. Again, this is something that recently posted by Rob. It was adopted from his blog, so all credit to him and a few others from the QlikView community. We can actually make selections on the front end where we can see the values being listed that comprise that particular field. So in this case, if I click category name, it will show me all the different category values and the number of occurrences that happen. I can click on a country, for example, and I would see the same thing. And how do you do that? First, you create a list box with a dollar field, which is a system field for the list of fields. And the next one is creating a table very quickly, having the dimension syntax. And you should be able to make a copy of the syntax as well from Rob's blog. Essentially, it's listing out the value of it, evaluating it on the fly, but we also enforce that so it shows the using set analysis to show everything that we have, and we just use the context of summing it so we can count it, the number of occurrences that happen. So that should conclude the 30 tips that I have, and we're going to share the content of our presentation to you, both the slides as well as all the different QlikView applications. With that, I turn it back to Roller.
Thank you, Jeffrey. Next, we're going to go to John Horner, and he's going to do our QlikView reporting tools review. John?
Thanks, Laurel, and thanks, Jeffrey. That's some great tips and tricks there. I think something for everybody. Certainly, I was learning one or two things there as well. So, very good. So I want to just spend, I'm going to speed this up a little bit. Jeffrey did a great job there showing us 30 tips and tricks. I'm not quite sure we fit the 30 minutes, so I'm going to speed up, catch some time up here a little bit. But I want to walk through and just review a little bit some of the reporting tools available for QlikView. And so let's talk a little bit about what QlikView reporting is and why might we want to use this. Well, a lot of us have come to know and love QlikView for its interactive, very visual, fast query and search and analysis capabilities, and perhaps feel that, having come from a reporting background historically, that QlikView is much stronger than that static reporting style where your organization perhaps has hundreds, if not thousands, of static reports produced and distributed around the organization on a daily, weekly basis. So indeed, QlikView is stronger in certain areas, but a lot of organizations still have a necessity to produce PDF or paper-printed reports, whatever it might be, for certain specific things. It could be for meetings, it could be for people taking report packs away to meet with clients or partners or other members of the business, and perhaps they don't have access to their QlikView applications. Now, of course, in this mobile world, that's becoming less and less. We're all traveling around with our iPads or iPhones or various different technologies now, and so gradually over the course of time, this may change a little more, but still at the moment there is a need to not only have your online interactive self-service QlikView analysis capabilities, but also to produce some static reports alongside that, and the kind of pixel-perfect reports that we perhaps have been used to historically. So, QlikView reporting really is, there are some certain options available to us. We're going to review a few of those options today, show you a little bit of what it looks like. You can see some examples on the screen here as well. So it's a way of producing output, QlikView sourced output, and combining it into a more static report, deliverable in PDF or PowerPoint or Excel or whatever it might be. Of course, the good thing is that by using QlikView as a source for these reports, is we can leverage the content that we've already built and the expressions and the data modeling that we've already put in place. We can leverage that so that we're not having to reproduce that in a separate package. So, you know, you could envisage having something like business objects alongside QlikView, and many customers do that, of course. But the data sets that you're working with can be different. So what we're going to show here is a way of hooking into and connecting to QlikView and using QlikView as a source to bring in existing content that's already been created. These reports can be scheduled and generated and emailed across the organization to users who may or may not have QlikView. So you can perhaps satisfy a wider distribution with some of these things, and you can have this as an on-demand reporting option from within QlikView as well. So a few options for us. We'll walk through a little bit of a review of certain items, and then I'll just kind of close out with sharing some of the reports that are out there. Okay, let me just go on to the next slide here. So we'll just walk through a review of some of the players out there. Let me just go back a slide here. So we're going to cover 3 or 4 options today. So some of you may be aware of some of these, all of these, none of these. But we'll just introduce the 3 or 4 different options. There may be others out there. We're not trying to focus in on anything particular, but these are perhaps some of the more popular and known about tools in the marketplace. So of course, first of all, we have QlikView Publisher and the PDF distribution capability that QlikView has internal. We have product from CIA, which is the report manager product, product from Nprinting, VisiBee Nprinting, that's been around a long time, and then perhaps a newer entrant to the marketplace, company or product called QV Report. And so we're going to walk through a little bit of a review of this. Some of this is constantly changing, so some of the items here may not necessarily be right up to date with the latest versions of each of these products. We keep, you know, we do our best to try and keep these up to date. But just to give you a flavor, really, of what might you look at when it comes to reporting versus the kind of things that you're looking at from a QlikView perspective. So again, I'll probably walk through these fairly quickly since we're going to make these available, and we can then kind of share with you some of the results, if you like. So Certainly one of the pieces you want to be thinking of is integration with Microsoft Office, HTML and PDF reports, that kind of thing. So we're trying to, this is just walking through some of the features here, some of the capabilities for these, the different products on the marketplace. Again, this may not be 100% accurate on the latest releases, but it gives you a bit of a flavor of where you're coming from and what's available. So distribution methods, another key component of that static report distribution mechanism. So how are you able to deliver content out to your user base? So via email server, might be saving reports into specific servers, file servers and directories, embedding HTML reports within emails, sending reports from inside QlikView documents. So while you're in a QlikView document, can you run a report and then distribute that to certain people, and the whole kind of scheduling and control over time and frequency of the report distribution model. So some key areas to think about that. Of course, the whole one of the reasons for the static reporting is to reach a wider audience and to being able to manage those recipients and what they receive is obviously very important. And so some areas here that you want to think about, from whether it be integration with your LDAP or importing recipient data from Excel, CSV files, associating those recipients with specific filters and distribution groups, so that when they receive a particular report, their report may be perhaps filtered down for a particular country or a particular channel or a particular product group, those kind of capabilities, and being able to utilize some of the existing QlikView fields, variables, and bookmarks that are available there. So again, some more considerations here. You can review this when you get access to the PowerPoints, of course. Then the whole concept of security are these password protected reports? Are we reducing QlikView documents based upon and their subsequent reports based upon the section access privileges that you already have in place, and indeed the Windows security that you have in place? Can these report distribution mechanisms be run as a Windows service? Do you need a QlikView server license, and these kind of things? So give you a bit of a feel for some of the considerations that you might be looking at, and how some of these particular products may compare. You might want to do some custom scripting and really get under the bonnet, if you like, of your reports and extend beyond what was already available within QlikView. So there's a couple of things here, and of course looping and distributing. So being able to loop around a set of countries, for instance, and filter the report page based upon a specific country, and then distribute that to a certain group of people within your organization. And then finally, there's some costing considerations, of course. We haven't tried to be exact here. It's a little bit of a ballpark estimate, but just gives you a flavor of some of the kind of some of the products, 4 of the products out there in the marketplace, and how they match up against each other in terms of all those kind of features, and in terms of the cost of the products there. Okay. There we go. All right. So we're going to I'm going to walk in now just to do a little bit of a quick demo here, if you like, of some of the things that we already have. in place, and this is, we're going to be looking really at end printing today. We're not going to demo all of these. It's just to give you a bit of a flavor of what you can get as an end result, and we'll show you a little bit of how some of that's done. So before I go too much further, I'm going to start here in QlikView, and this is a demo solution that's available on the web, sales management and customer analysis. So we've just tweaked this a little bit. So within QlikView itself, you have the reports menu, which you can access through the client here, like I am, but also through the web browser. And within here, we have one report, top 100 target customers, and the concept here is that we are going to pick on this particular customer targeting page. We're going to pick customers who in Q1 purchased mountain bikes. So our customer list is over on the right hand side here, and dollar sales, number of orders. And on the bottom, we're going to look at the same time period and look for customers who purchased mountain bikes but did not purchase accessories. So this reduces our list down a little bit. When we run our report here, then the report will give us our top 100 target customers. So there may be more than 100 in this list, but this is going to give us our top 100. So we can run that report, do a preview. I'll zoom it out a little bit here. Gives you a little bit better view of this. And we can see that we have, from within QlikView, something that we designed within QlikView, we now have a near pixel perfect report, static report at this point, but it's showing us our customers, the list of customers, and it's showing the selections that we made on the top as well, and a little bit of a logo. So that gives you a starting point. Now what we did within our end printing environment with this particular solution is took that QlikView report, that existing QlikView report, and scheduled it to run on a daily or weekly basis, and also added a couple of recipients. So we have myself here and Jeffrey as recipients, and you'll see that when we look within end printing here that myself, I am associated with the country UK, and Jeffrey is associated with the country US. And so this is some of the setup that we put in place beforehand, and the end result here is that when we ran that through the task scheduler, we created this. We actually distributed this instead of by email. We distributed it to a file folder. Both Jeffrey and I have our own folder names here. This is just on my laptop, but you can imagine this was a server environment. And when we open up Jeffrey's folder here and look at the target customers there, then we can see that the filter that was associated with Jeffrey got picked, and so this is country United States, gives us a list of top 10 customers, top 100 customers for the United States. And alternatively, when we look at the output from that's in my folder, we've got a slightly different selection. So dynamic selections at the point of time that the report is distributed to different people. So that's taking an existing QlikView report that is in your existing QlikView application and using end printing to distribute that in PDF, but also applying that kind of loop, the filtering, automated filtering to that based upon the recipients. Okay, so that's the first thing that I wanted to kind of share with you. Okay, secondly, I'll finish off here and share with you an Excel report that we've created. So in this case, now this report doesn't exist in QlikView already, so we've created a brand new report template, and I can open this up and start to share a little bit with you. But if we do a preview of this particular report, then you'll see the end result. Taking a little while here just to load up on my machine, but it's opening up Excel. So this is an Excel report that we've created here, and you'll see that we have header here, and this is going to loop around different pages. So we have different pages for the channels that we run. So this one is showing our store channel. You'll see that it's created as an individual channel sheet as well, so we can look at this by channel. So we have different reports, and we have two different QlikView objects in here. So the first thing that we have is an image of the one of the tables that is within QlikView. So it gives us a flat image, but filters it by the channel store. And then below that we have a table of data that is our product sales and margin analysis and margin heat chart from our QlikView report. So again, a mixture here of an image and a table of data from our existing QlikView application. And again, both of these filtered slightly differently based upon the channel that they are within. So just to kind of share with you a little bit of where that comes from, we can see on here that this is our KPI scorecard in the top here that we have. So this is the image that we had portrayed. So we've joined that image so we've leveraged that from our QlikView application and really compiled a report here that is that particular image combined with the margin heat chart that is within our products table. And so we're bringing in two different parts of QlikView, two different objects of QlikView, matching them together and creating our Excel-based report that gives you this kind of formatting. And finally, we've then filtered that by the channel. And so if we go back to the dashboard here and pick channel, then we can see that the KPI scorecard changes. When we pick the individual channel, it changes again, and that's what we're seeing on our report there. So pretty easy to put this together. We're really pointing at, we can edit the template. I'll walk you through very quickly here, another 2 or 3 minutes, just to give you a flavor of what we're doing. But we've added in a page break here. This loops the pages by channel. We've also added in some text here that allows us to call that field and label that field. We have connected, obviously we've connected to that specific QlikView dashboard first of all, but we've also pulled in the KPI scorecard table and positioned that within Excel, and finally positioned our margin heat chart from a product perspective and positioned that below the other image. So within end printing here, we are designing the template layout that is going to be used, and when that gets run in within end printing, this is the end result. So really easy to combine different QlikView objects together from different sheets and build your own report layouts that you want to use and distribute those across your organization. So in the interest of time, I don't want to go through too much there. I think that got me through about 20 minutes or so there, and probably allows us to catch up a little bit with some of the other areas that we have. So I will end it there for now, and we'll hand back to Laurel and move on to Rob's presentation.
Great, thank you, John. Now we're going to go to section 3 with Rob, QVD, multi-tier data architecture.
Good day, everyone. My name is Rob Wonderlic, and today I'm going to talk about implementing a multi-tiered data architecture in QlikView using QVD files. So we'll explore what QVD files are, what the benefits of using QVD files are, and why you may or may not choose to use a multi-tiered data architecture. So this is the classic single-tier model, as we call it, that many of you are familiar with. This is how most people start with QlikView. We have a QVW dashboard on the right side that loads its data directly from back-end data sources such as databases, flat files, any other source. But each script, each QVW is doing its own loading. So before we explore further, let's talk about the terms extract, transform, and load, sometimes called ET&L or ETL. And that's the process of getting the data out of the source database all the way up to the dashboard. So instead of a single-tier concept where every user-facing QVW is loading its own data, we can have the concept of a multi-tier concept. A multi-tier, let's start with a two-tier concept where we are doing the extract and the transform function together, and we would do that in a QVW using standard QlikView script. There's nothing special here. It's the same script we would use in a user-facing dashboard. But we typically put that in a separate QVW. Usually it doesn't have any user interface elements. It doesn't have any charts or graphs on it. It's just all about the script. We load the data from the operational data source and store it into a special file called the QVD on the file system, usually on the same server as the QlikView server itself or the QlikView publisher. And then the user-facing QVWs, the dashboards, read those files as their data source. So they read from the QVDs instead of to the back-end databases. Notice the dotted line on the lower left. That means we can also add data in one of those dashboards from the back-end data sources. So using QVDs is not an all-or-nothing proposition. You can mix and match and implement this incrementally. Let's talk a bit about what a QVD is. So QVD is an acronym that stands for QlikView Data File. A QlikView data file holds one QlikView table. So in your data model, that customers table, that sales fact table, one table per QVD file, as opposed to a QVW that holds multiple tables. QVDs load up very fast, much faster than a database. That gives you an extract, a reusable extract once, single version of your data. And you can also use it as a way to store data beyond your current data mart, beyond what you might have stored in your back-end or operational systems. How do we create QVDs? Well, we do it with QlikView script. We typically create these special purpose QVWs, like call them loader QVW, for example. Loader is a common name. We issue the SQL select to get the data from the back end. And then we use the QlikView store statement. So if we look at the bottom there of the script example, we have store, the name of the QlikView table, into, and we point to a file in the file system. And by convention, we give it a QVD extension. So a QVD holds one QlikView table, and the loaders and the QVDs are typically organized around subject matter, performance, and script requirements. We might segment this out into different areas like HR, sales, etc. The QVDs that are created on the right hand of the slide can be and are frequently a many-to-one relationship. So employee master may consist of data that came from employee, salary, position, and emergency, other tables, and even an Excel spreadsheet or something thrown in there. But the final table is going to be one table stored in one QVD. Consuming QVDs is very easy. We do that with the load script statement. So if we look at the example on the lower right-hand corner here, we do a load field list or a load asterisk from, and we point to the QVD in the file system. We put the parameters QVD in parentheses to identify what type of file it is that is required. So it's very easy to just load these up. So in this case, we're going to consume employee master and vacation into those end-user dashboards. Let's talk about some of the benefits of QVDs. We're going to walk through each of these on the screen, so I won't read them to you. I'll give you a moment to look them over. So QVDs load very, very fast, typically orders of magnitude faster than loading from a database. The actual results depends on the hardware and the network, but they're very, very fast. We can also use them to reduce the load on the back-end database. If we don't use QVDs, as we scale up and it gets very popular and everybody's reading from the employee table, the load on the database grows and grows as the popularity of QlikView grows, or it grows and grows during periods of development activity. With a QVD solution, we do the SQL select once. We only hit the database once. We store it in a QVD, and thereafter every load reads from the QVD. We can also use this to ease the maintenance of various script, getting rid of redundant scripting, for example. So let's say we have a transform change where we have a new business rule. We need to remap a cost center. Without QVDs, we've got to go find every script that is referencing that cost center and make that change. Using a QVD, we make that change once in the loader QVW, and then it immediately becomes available to all consumers of that data. We don't have to hunt down who's using it and make the changes individually, and more importantly, they all happen all at once. A very strong benefit, I think, is the separation of roles that can be achieved by using QVDs. So on the left-hand side here, we typically have what I call data experts, people who understand the back-end data, people who understand databases, database drivers, typically have the software, also have the security access to the back-end data. They, or a smaller group in that role, can be in charge of getting the data out and getting it prepped for a larger core of business experts whose expertise is in identifying how to analyze that data, what the questions are that need to be asked. So we can separate those roles and create some great efficiency, create some ease of use for the organization. For example, only the people on the data side need to have database drivers, the configuration, the licenses, possibly the security access, whereas we can take this already cleaned data and distribute it to a larger group of business experts. There's a lot of chores that go on in preparing data for reporting, different kinds of modeling. Denormalization is one of the common ones where we're joining data together. This is stuff that makes a lot of sense to the data modelers, to the DBA types. It may not make as much sense to the business users. It's nice to just be able to have one group doing that, taking care of that, and creating ready-to-report data. Another problem that QVDs address is what's called the single version of truth. It's such a common problem, we abbreviate with an acronym. This is a data consistency problem. Let's say it's 6 in the morning, sales QVW loads, and it sums up the orders in the database, says we have $1 million in orders. 6:30 a.m., commission runs, and it sums orders, but there's been new orders added to the database, and it says we have slightly more than $1 million. So at the 8 a.m. meeting, people are looking at two different results and asking, well, what is the right answer? And it causes confusion. So with a QVD, we can have a loader that runs at 6 a.m. that sums up the order, creates an orders QVD. At 6, immediately followed by the load of the sales QVD, which gets that $1 million result. At 6:30 a.m., we can run commission, and it will also get the same result because it will use the same data source. Also, if that stuff runs off of schedule or is rerun, we will still get consistent results anytime throughout the day. So you get to control when those values change. Incremental load is the process of loading only new or changed data from your database. And it's required when you have large volumes. So it's required for performance when you have a lot of data and you want to pick up just the changes in your order system or some other type of fax system. Incremental load is implemented using QVDs. So QVDs were required to do incremental load. So you don't need to do incremental load for everything, but if you have a case where you have a lot of rows and you're adding new rows to it all the time or small amounts of updates, incremental load will help you. Using incremental load can also allow you to reload data more frequently. You may have felt that you're limited to reloading overnight because of the time it takes. But implementing incremental load, you may decide to do intraday reloads and load several times a day and give fresher data to your users. We can also use some functions that are provided in QlikView to get information from the QVDs and build something like a QlikView dictionary. So these collection of QVDs can become like a data mart, like call it the QlikView mart. But it becomes this collection of cleaned, ready-to-report data. And there are functions provided in the script that allows you to extract data from those metadata, if you will, from those QVD files and do things like report on how many rows do we have and when was it created. We can also do some analysis on the fields. What's the commonality of the fields? So we can start looking for things like, did we name fields consistently? This provides a developer tool to be able to identify where is the data that I'm looking for, where did we store the currency field, what table is that in. So some very powerful tools for the developer, and the modeler can be created easily by scanning the QVDs. QVX is a cousin of the QVD file. It's an open variant of the QVD. So while only QlikView can create QVDs, it's a proprietary format, there's a standard called QVX that is a published standard that allows third-party vendors to create something that are very close to QVDs. They're not quite as fast. So non-QlikView ETL tools like Informatica, some other tools, ETL tools, etc., can generate QVX files. You can think of them as QVD equivalents. So we have kind of an understanding of QVDs now. Let's talk about what kind of architectures you would implement in terms of a multi-tiered architecture and how the QVDs would fit into that. So again, we've got the three functions that we're always performing to get ready, get the data ready: extract, transform, and load. In the basic single-tier model, where we're loading directly into the user-facing or final dashboard, we're doing the ETL, all three functions in one script, and that's the same script that has the end-user stuff in it. In the two-tier model, we're going to move the extract and transform into a separate QVW whose only job is to do the extract and transform, get the data out of the database, get it cleaned up, put it in QVDs, and now it's ready to be loaded into user-facing QVWs for reporting. So that's the two-tier model. In the three-tier model, we break the extract and the transform into two different layers, and one follows the other. So the extract's job is to just get the data out of the database. It's a mechanical operation. It's not about renaming fields or transforming any data or cleansing it. It's just about getting it physically out of the database into a set of QVDs. The transform scripts then run and combine and clean those QVDs into the final reporting QVDs, which are then loaded by the user-facing QVWs in the load. So now we've got the three tiers, E, T, and L, broken into three separate pieces. We can have a fourth level, which is quite common, which is called the model layer or sometimes a ClikMart layer, where we are actually combining multiple QVDs together into a QVW. And if you haven't run across this before, you can load a QVW as a data source using the binary statement. So this would be a way to pre-assemble a group of tables, a group of QVDs, into something like the sales reporting model that might have a sales fact table, it might have customers, sales reps, catalog, those other tables all connected together into the star schema that's used to do the reporting. And then that can be loaded as a data source from into the front-end user reporting QVWs. So we can have up to 4 layers, and it's quite common to do this. So this is the 4-tier model. We have extract that creates QVDs, transform that creates QVDs from the extracted QVDs, and then model that loads up some of the transformed QVDs and creates some pre-linked models. Note in the bottom here in the user-facing QVWs that we can be loading from the model and we can add in something from the transform layer. We could potentially be adding something all the way back into the back end too. So it's important to understand that this is not a monolithic all-or-nothing approach. You set up the framework, you set up the structure, and then use the structure, you implement the structure at the speed that works for you, and use the structure when it makes sense for your organization. So here's a recommended source directory structure that I like to use, and you'll find many of them similar to that. So we'll have a root, I'll call it QlikView development, and below that we would typically have subject matters, and below that subject matter, like finance or sales, below that we would have subdirectories, and I'm going to talk about the recommended list of subdirectories, or that structure that you would use to implement the multi-tier. So we would have QlikView development, and then we would have this exact same mirrored image for QlikView production, and possibly for QlikView test or any other layer. So here is a recommended source folder architecture for a 3 or 4-tier architecture. Let's look at the 3 on the bottom first. So that would be the extract QVD, the transform QVD, and the model. So those are data directories that will hold the QVDs, and in the case of the model, it will hold the QVW. Going back to the top, the documents is where we're going to serve up the user-facing QVWs. Those are the dashboards your users are going to interface with. So that's all the server is going to serve up through access point. We'll typically then have a config directory where we store script snippets such as libraries, connection strings, things like that that are stored externally. And then the loaders directory. And the loaders directory is a set of QBWs that contain script that generate the extract QBDs and the transform QBDs and the models. So those are segregated from the user-facing stuff for organization and also to keep it out of the access point from the user. It's not something the end user typically needs to see or would want to see. So here's the flow of how this would work. Looking from the left side, we would have a loader that does an extract that pulls data out of the source data tables, the backend database, spreadsheets, whatever we got, stores the output in the extract QBD. That's chained to the next task, which is a transform that reads that extracted QBD or more and outputs a transformed QBD. And then moving over to the right, those transformed QBDs are consumed by a user-facing final QBW. Having this kind of structure defines where we want to put data based on what stage that data is in. So looking in the lower left, if we're using another ETL tool like Expressor or Informatica, and it's generating transformed data, whether that's QBD or QBX, we know where to put it. It goes into the transform layer. If we have something that's generating raw data, some sort of FTP extract or something, it would go into the extract QBD. So why separate extract and transform? I think there's really good reasons for it, and I recommend that you just give it a shot. But let me talk about why I think we should separate them. The characteristics of those two processes are quite different. So the extract characteristics is the goal is to get the data. Its bottlenecks are performance and resource. It's about getting that done as quickly as possible using and consuming the smallest amount of resource possible. It's an infrequently changed. Once you just extract this table, that's it. It doesn't usually require any changes to the script thereafter. It's a highly mechanical process. It doesn't require that you really know anything about QlikView. It just knows which tables do you want. So it's more of a database administrator type process. Typically uses non-QlikView resources, things like drivers, passwords, sometimes different network connections even. It's a good candidate for delta processing or incremental loads, meaning loading change data only. And it's commonly just a one-to-one table. We're pulling out one table from source and putting out one on the other end. So that's the characteristics of an extract. The transform characteristics are different. The goal is to prepare the data for the dashboard QBW. It frequently changes in response to business needs or new requirements. It requires pretty much an expert level of QlikView knowledge. That's the person who needs to understand QlikView scripting, QlikView design, what the whole process is here. It's not a good candidate for delta processing. If we're trying to process just changes, it's usually easier to just reprocess the whole QBD. And it's commonly many to one table, so it's a little more of a complex animal. So these two requirements are quite different, and the characteristics of those two functions are quite different. So by separating them, we can just get the focus on what are the goals of those layers. So let's look at what a basic extract looks like. So we point to some directory where we want to write it out to in a script. We connect to a database. We do a SQL select. We don't even need a load statement because we're not going to transform anything. In this case, we select all the columns from the sales.customer table. And then on the last script line, we store that table into a customer QBD. It's really straightforward. It's pretty mechanical. However, it does get a little more complicated. What about if we want to do delta and incremental processing? Or what about dependencies and scheduling? Like we want to know when this runs, we want to fire off something else after it. And there's another issue that comes up, proliferation of these scripts. If we put every one of these tables in a different QBW, we start to get a lot of QBWs. That may be manageable. It may not. It may be something that's difficult for your site. If you're using Publisher, you can now create these little tasks that just extract from QBDs. That's one approach. But you can also implement a tool to manage that manage the extract complexities. So you can use QlikView Expressor. If you use QlikView, if you want to just use a pure QlikView solution, on my website in the download section, there is something called tableextractor.qbw. So if you go to robwonderlich.com, that's ROBWUNDERLICH.com, and go to the downloads, you can try out the table extractor. And that's a table-driven approach. You configure what tables you want to extract in a spreadsheet, and you give a list in the spreadsheet and define if you want delta processing, etc. So something like that many people have implemented, and there's an example for you there that works pretty well. Managing transforms, you can have the same issues where I have a lot of different transforms going on. How many different QVWs do I put them in? How do I manage the associations between these things? So again, you can use a tool like Expressor or another ETL tool. You can also use a pure QlikView approach only, which quite a few people do. I've implemented some of those, and we can help you design one after we talk to you about your requirements if you're interested. Typically using spreadsheets or some other type of data dictionary where we're modeling and identifying what kinds of transformations we want to take care of, especially column renames. Taking that kind of approach makes it maintainable and also makes it easy to report on what's going on. In terms of understanding your QVD farm, what's out there, there are a couple of tools to scan your QVDs and report on it. There's the QlikView Governance Dashboard, which is quite interesting. I recommend looking at it. You can download it from the Qlik Market, which is market.QlikView.com. And there's also a tool that I provide called QVD Dictionary, which again you can get from my website in the download section, which will scan your QVD. So this will give you information about what fields are present where, some indication of the data quality of the fields, the cross-reference, the lineage of the fields, where did they come from, what database tables, what created the extract QVD, what created the transform QVD, etc. So those are the tools that you can use to manage some of those complexities as you scale into that environment. So some people are a little afraid of the multi-tier data environment. They sometimes think, oh, that's a lot of files to create. My suggestion and my experience has been that once you create it, it's simple because it's not that hard to create. It's a well-known construct, and it takes away a lot of the decision-making, where to drop things. So you get more down to rolling up your sleeves and just getting things done. That said, if you don't have an environment that you see those benefits in, then don't do it. If you're fine with a single-tier model because you have a very simple thing going on, you don't have a lot of reusability or maintainability, you don't have a lot of crossover, then certainly stick with what's working for you and most efficient for your organization. But if you're experiencing some of those other problems, this is a possible solution. So thank you for your time today. Good day, everyone.
Great, thank you so much, Rob. And we're going to go back to John Horner for our fourth and final section, ad hoc query and search using conditional dimensions and expressions.
Great, thanks Laurel, thanks Rob for that. All right, so we're right back on time here. I think we should finish right on the 12 o'clock mark, Pacific time that is. So this final session, Jeffrey earlier talked about building your own sheets and designing your own, my page within the web browser using the QlikView repository there. In this section, we're going to talk a little bit more about ad hoc queries and search within QlikView. So instead of leveraging existing content from the repository and building your own page, this is really more building your own query, chart, table, if you like. Something that I think has been users have been looking to do for a number of years. I know there's a few of us, Rob included, myself. Many of us have tried to get this working various different routes in previous versions. But anyway, with version 11, this became much easier to do, and so we will we'll share with you the end result and also a little bit of how you put these together. But really helps empower end users to build their own reports or queries, for want of a better word, and also provides your design and development team with with a capability of saying, hey, you know what, we don't know everything that you're going to ask for. However, as long as it's within this confines of this data model, then we will create you certain specific content, and you can go and create your own after that. So really good mix here of what IT and what the development teams can push out to the users, and also then what users can do on their own from a self-service perspective. So good mixed model. So we'll walk through this here. Okay, so I'm going to have some slides here, but I'm actually going to walk through this in QlikView. So I'll jump straight into a demo. It's easier to show the end result here, and also show you how we put this together. So let's start at the end, if you like, and show you what the end result is within QlikView, and then we'll walk back through and see a little bit of how we put this together. So again, earlier I was using this sales management and customer analysis demo that's available on the web. So I've leveraged that and created a new sheet here, which I'm calling ad hoc query. So I'll walk you through the constituent parts. Most of it looks identical to the rest of the application. So we have our search, current selections, and filters down the left-hand side, and our filters for time periods across the top here. The slight difference is in the body of the page here, and there are different ways of laying this out. This is just something I've done for today's demo. You probably see examples of this where the ad hoc dimensions and ad hoc expressions might be down the left-hand side, but I've pushed them up to the top just for the purposes of today. So this is going to this section here is going to allow the user, if you like, to generate their own queries. So we have around about 20 odd dimension attributes that they can pick from, and we have 8 measures or expressions that they can pick to include. And the bottom area of the screen here is an area that is basically a blank piece of paper, if you like, a blank area of the screen that is going to change depending upon what we pick. So, okay, let's take a look at what we can do here. So we can go ahead now and simply make selections on the top. It's a little bit, anyone who's kind of worked with query generated tools, if you like, very similar. A lot of those are what's called drag and drop capabilities. This is similar, except for you're not dragging and dropping, you're simply selecting. So as soon as I select country there, it brings up this ad hoc query down the bottom and shows me the country and all of the expressions that are in our list here. If I clear that out again, you can see in this blank area it's giving me a little bit of info on what I should do. So please select your dimensions and expressions from the above lists. And please note, if no expressions are selected, all expressions will be displayed. So as a default. So that's why when I pick country, it's showing all 8. If, however, I want to concentrate on just picking the sales amount and perhaps the margin percentage and maybe the average sell price, then I can very simply click on those items that I want to include in my query, in my report, if you like, and they get added immediately. Of course, I have standard QlikView capability to change the sort on these columns and sort by sales amount, so it's now showing the countries in order of sales amount. And likewise, I have standard capability to change the result set based upon filters. So I can filter this down and my query changes. So again, if you back to the whole ad hoc reporting through the SQL generator products, exact same capability here, but with the speed that comes with QlikView from a selection perspective, and also really a much easier mechanism rather than dragging and dropping of simply selecting and deselecting the fields that you want to be shown or hidden accordingly depending upon what you do. So really, really easy to build these queries and build these these things out. We can add whatever fields we want into this table and build our application out accordingly. So very easy to pick and choose what it is you want to show. Very easy to pick and choose and change your mind. And of course, with QlikView, with the fast change, for instance, then we have the capability of changing from this straight table environment here into a pivot table environment, and being able to look at the data that way as well. You can add fast changes here for charts also. What you might need to be a little bit careful of with charts is that not all charts display the same if you have multiple dimensions and multiple metrics. So you may choose to deal with charts slightly differently and have them be a little bit more specific in terms of the number of fields that you can pick, or you simply let the user have a free rein and add in a chart, and if they pick something that's a little bit wacky, then obviously they have the capability of changing it. So just to give you an example, I'll change the fast type change here to be bar chart and line chart as well. We're going to clear out my selections, and I will do a year-month sales amount. This should look okay from a selection perspective. So now we're able to see a trend. If we want to look at 2012, we can pick that filter. If we want to see that as a line chart, we can see that, and then back through straight table and pivot table. So it allows us to allows the user, if you like, to create their own queries, filter those queries, so the where clauses, if you like, by making selections, and then change the visualization on the fly. So one final piece here before I start to walk through how we put this together and compile this. What I've also included down the bottom here are some preset reports. Just a couple of examples of what you can do. So as well as being able to build your own, we can have some predefined reports here. So this one is a country analysis with everything in. The next one is a product query where we've got the product category, subcategory, and product fields in view. Again, in straight tables, we're able to make the selections from within the table as well as on the side here. So very easy to use, very easy to filter these things. We could maximize this on the screen and show the whole screen if it was a particularly wide table. So very easy to interact here. These particular reports will, if I already pre-select my data, for instance, will also respect that selection. And so really what it does is picks the field that it wants to display, the metrics that it wants to display, and it associates the time period that I already had selected. If I want to change that time period, then I can do that, and it works accordingly. Okay, so really, really powerful stuff, and you can get right down to your kind of order details level, showing the transaction details within your application. Okay. Okay, so let's take a little look here at the constituent parts. So first of all, I'm going to go into the data model. It's something that we do in the data model here, so I can share that with you. Again, I've just taken an existing demo report, and I've done a binary load from the existing one that I downloaded from the web, and then I've made some changes up here in this particular sheet here. So first of all, I've created a table for our dimension selections. I've called it _ad hoc dimensions. Jeffrey mentioned earlier about the hide prefix on the underscore. This just helps it hide from the current selections box and selections from the user perspective through normal QlikView capability. So we've created basically a list of field names here that we want the user to select. These can be different from the actual field names. We're going to associate them shortly, but it's a list of items that we want the user to be able to select. And also I've created some groupings here. I didn't show it today, but there is a kind of advanced mechanism to this where you can actually group some of these dimensions together and show that in a more of a tree view scenario. And I've provided a code here as well My left join here is simply creating my tree view field and just concatenating a bunch of zeros with my code here to give myself an ad hoc dim ID, which should be unique, and I'll come on to that shortly. So this is our list of dimensions and then list of expressions. So pretty simple. Create the lists that you want people to pick from. These tables will be unrelated to the rest of the data model. So it's very important to note that these are what are typically referred to as island tables. So ad hoc dimensions here is not related to the rest of the data model, neither is ad hoc expressions, which means that when we make a selection in any of these fields, nothing else in QlikView gets affected because the data model is not stitched together from that perspective. So okay, we've got our tables in place now, our data islands that we need. So next we're going to create our list boxes. So I mean that's pretty easy. You see here I've created 2 list boxes. Look at the properties of these. It's the field ad hoc dimension that I want to show. And on the presentation tab here, I've set it to be fixed number of columns, order by column, and I've also changed the sort order to be in the load order. You don't have to do that. You could sort it by text. It's up to you. I wanted it in a logical order there. So we have the dimensions, and exactly the same with the expressions. It's just the expression field, and again, we have single column this time, so there's not as many, and that's ready to go. So we have our list boxes now that allow us to pick the fields that we want. The one slight difference is in the presentation here, we're going to override the selection style. Typically the default selection style, in order to select multiple items, you would usually have to use the control key. Well, the particular LED checkboxes option allows you to select multiple items without holding down the control key. So I can go ahead and select country, state, city, and zip. And even though you can't see me on the webinar, I can promise you I'm not holding down the control key. I'm simply selecting them. And so it's a toggle on and off. So a slightly different state. It makes it a little bit easier to use here. So that's our list boxes. Then we're going to create our table and our query. So even though this looks blank down the bottom, what we've actually done is created a chart. In this case, we created a straight table and allowed the fast change options here. And we added in all of the dimensions that we wanted to include, potentially include within the report. So we put in all of those fields that are in the dimensions option in our report here. And likewise, we put in all of the expressions that we wanted to include. Okay, I'll come back to this in a second, but we include everything, all possible combinations within the dimensions and the expressions for starters. Then in the General tab, we go on to the error messages here and look at the calculation condition unfulfilled. And I've put in my own message. You'll probably remember, please select your dimensions expressions from the above lists. Just helping our users out, giving them a good idea of what to do. So that's our custom calculation condition unfulfilled expression. And then we have a calculation condition. So in other words, only calculate this table, this chart, if the get selected count of the ad hoc dimension field that we have created is greater than 0. So in other words, if I haven't selected anything, don't show anything. Otherwise, it would show all of these dimensions and all of these expressions as a default. We'd rather get the user to select something first and then display it. Okay? So that's that part of what we're doing. The next part is the dimensions, and this is really the key to this. So for each dimension now in QlikView 11, we have these conditional show options for each dimension. We've always kind of had that on the chart itself, but now we have it for each dimension. And so what we're able to do is put in this conditional expression, and what I'm doing is count a substring count for, and I'm concatenating the selections that we've made. Now I'm actually using the ad hoc dim ID, rather than the text, the actual dimension that they are selecting. I'll come on to that in a second. But we're concatenating all of the fields that they select and pipe delimiting it, and we're doing a substring count for ID 001, or ID 001 because we're on country. If we look at the next one, it's ID 002. So each of these dimensions is related to a particular ID in our table, and so that's how we control whether or not this shows or not. If they have it selected, then it will show. So if I pick country, then the condition here is satisfied because the ad hoc dimension ID 001 is within the concatenation. So that's how that works. And we do virtually the same for the expressions. Each of the expression has a conditional show, and in this case we're using the ad hoc expression code of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, etc. So each of these has a conditional show, which determines whether or not it would show up or not. Okay? That pretty much is how you put these together. Fairly simple, just 4 or 5 steps to get this page up and running. You can obviously copy an existing page from your dashboard and take the template layout and just simply adjust it. I should warn you that anyone who's perhaps looked at this and used the example that is in the What's New in QlikView 11 has some little difficulties with it because depending on the field names that you use. And so part of the reason that I added in, I go back and look at the script here, when I added in this code to give myself a unique ad hoc dimension ID, well, I did that because the year field, for example, is actually being used multiple times. So the actual text year is being used multiple times. And so this particular tip and trick, if you like, gets around the problem of using the description itself, because when you concatenate the description itself, if I just selected year quarter, then I would equally get year quarter and year in my table because each of them has the contains the text year. So the year one would appear when it shouldn't appear. So it might be just a little something that you've noticed with that. So this particular one will get around that issue. The final piece of the puzzle here is down the bottom. These buttons or text objects simply have an action associated with them, and so the action that is associated with them is apply bookmark. It gives a bookmark ID, so bookmark 6 in that case, bookmark 7 in this case, and when you click on these, it'll apply a particular bookmark. And so what it's doing is it takes you to a certain page when you apply that bookmark, and it makes the selections on these fields that you have and whatever selections are in that bookmark. So you can assign those to these particular areas here, and you can see the bookmarks that I have. So just as easily I could, as well as using the buttons here, I could actually go to and select those particular ones. It has the same effect. Okay, so that is ad hoc query and search. I'm going to finish finally here with a little bit on the search side of things. And so I'm actually going to look at something Jeffrey covered earlier on in his tips and tricks, was some of the advanced search and filters and selections within QlikView. So I think there's some great tips there. I'm going to add on one final piece here, just to remind everybody who doesn't know. But you can, in QlikView, as well as searching within list boxes, also search within expressions within a chart and table. And so in this case, I'm going to look at I'm going to select 2013 Q1, and I'm going to perhaps look at my GP percentage and do a search for anything that is less than 10%. Okay, so I can apply that search. We have this search icon in the field. I can use the same thing Jeffrey showed earlier, use the less than 10%, and you can see now that what I've done is filtered all of the products, because that was the field that I had available to me in the query, and so now I'm looking at only 54 products out of 266, all of which in 2013 Q1 have a GP percentage that is less than 10, I think I keyed in. So very, very easy to do this advanced search, and of course it respects the filters that you have and the field that you have. So this is really powerful now, because I can do my filter on any of these fields that are based in my table here, and perhaps look for certain, if I want to look at weeks here, I might want to look for weeks where I've had greater than $1 million in sales. Okay, so I can go ahead and put that in. That gives me the weeks that have where we've sold greater than $1 million, and of course we could go ahead and select the alternative and select the opposite. So we could right-click on here and do select excluded. That gives us the weeks where we didn't sell $1 million. So really, really powerful now, integrating this ad hoc query piece with the ad hoc search piece. To add these search icons in your expressions, just go into your properties, go on to presentation, find your particular expressions that you want to have a search within, in this case sales amount, and we have this searchable option, very, very similar to the drop-down select that appears for dimension fields. Click the searchable on, that'll give you that capability. You might need a little bit of user training for your users to understand how to use the search, and how to clear out the asterisks and how to do the greater than piece, but pretty easy once you've got it going. Okay, so that pretty much wraps up this ad hoc query and search piece here, and I want to thank you all for your attention today. This brings to a conclusion. I'll hand back to Laurel in a second, but brings to a conclusion the user conference. This was our second of the year. The first one we had in January was an on-premise user conference at our offices in San Ramon. We'll be looking to probably do another one of these in Q4, so we look forward to contacting you again with some perhaps slightly different material, go over some of the same stuff here. So really appreciate your time, and if anyone has any questions or anything they would like to ask about some of the topics that we've covered here today, or perhaps have some ideas for some of the some topics that we might cover in the next user conference, then we would be more than happy to hear from you. So please feel free to contact me directly or the team here at Armanino, and we'll look forward to catching up with you. So that's it from me. I'll hand back to Laurel, and we'll sign off here.
Great, thank you, John. On your screen, you will see John's contact information. Like he said, please feel free to reach out to him or anyone else on the team if you have additional questions. As you exit your webinar, please do take a few moments and fill out our brief evaluation. Your feedback is very important to us, and it helps us improve upon our webinars in the future. Also, just a reminder that the recording and slides will be posted on our website within the next 3 days, and you will also be receiving a link to today's recording so that you can review it or share it with others. And any questions that were submitted during the webinar today, we didn't have time to address those on the webinar, but our presenters will be following up with you to answer those questions. So thanks so much for joining us today, and we look forward to having you join us on a future webinar. Take care.